I don't know how to start any of these videos, so I'm just going to say that none of you know how much of a Chad George Orwell actually was. There was a fascist civil war in Spain, and George lived in England, and he said, "I'm gonna sort that out," and entered that kind of ridiculous war. Both sides of it were so broke they could not afford functioning weapons. Orwell was given a German Mauser dated 1896. That's 40 years old, and every single part of it was corroded and rusted. And they didn't even try to give the best guns to the best people, because the best gun in the group was given to a 15-year-old kid whose nickname was the Spanish word for fat. Where he was fighting, more people were killed by friendly fire than by fascists. Kids as young as 11 were playing with grenades. There was one 12-year-old kid who threw a grenade into a fire pit. When they asked him, "Why did you do that?" the kid said, "It was for a joke." Ammunition for mortar shells was as you would expect. Shit. At least 1 in 4 bombs would not explode. If a bomb landed next to you, you would go, "Yeah, free bomb." You would pick it up, wipe off the mud, and shoot it back at them. There was a rumor that the same bomb never exploded and was just shot back and forth every day. Hot potato, hot potato. Which meant that you could have the most intense games of noughts and crosses. Take that, fascism. And this part I absolutely love. Orwell said, "At this period of the war, the real weapon was not the rifle, but the megaphone." Testing. Orwell's militia would just yell at the fascists and it would convert them. One guy, all throughout the night, had a megaphone, and he would just say, "We have buttered toast, we have buttered toast." But there was no buttered toast. He lied! So, where's the toast? Where indeed, mate? Orwell was part of this sneak attack led by a dude named... Wait! There's comedy here. It was a sneak attack. In other words, nobody would be expecting it. They're Spanish! It's a sneak attack! Nobody expected the Spanish Inquisition! Part of this sneak attack led by a dude named Jorge Roca. And in the middle of the night, they waded through mud in dead silence, moving at snail fucking pace. And he jumped down into one of their trenches, and he wasn't even allowed to shoot because friendly fire was so bad that it would probably just hurt more of their own people. So he found this fascist and was just chasing him with his bayonet. Boom, 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 boom. I want you in my room. Let's spend the night together. The attack went wrong, they had to retreat, and another Chad, he'll come in later, Major Cop, said, "Alright, Jorge is missing. We need 5 people to volunteer and go back into the field and find him." Guess who volunteered? I bet he's gonna say Orwell. Orwell. Fuck, I'm good at this. They went out and they got scared and they ran back in. But Orwell said, "In the half-light, one man is invisible. So I went back alone." Jorge! 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 Where are you? Legend. He comes back and he's like, "I'm sorry. I couldn't find him." "Oh, George. He's right over there." Mate. Mate. After that, Orwell had a break from trench warfare and went back to Barcelona on leave. But something was really, really wrong. Because instead of getting paraded around the streets like the soldiers used to, he was smuggled in at 5 a.m. in a train. Now this will be the hardest part to explain because it's kind of complicated. But the people fighting against the fascists were not one big group. They were a bunch of little groups. Orwell was part of a militia that wanted a revolution, whereas the government and the communists, which were funded by Russia and controlled by Russia, did not want a revolution. That meant getting rid of the militias, getting rid of Orwell's militia. And you could see it in the newspapers because the propaganda was insane, to the point where the same guy would be congratulated as a hero as part of the army, but in the same paper would be denounced as an idiot as a militiaman. The same dude, David, the legendary army soldier, is much better than David, the shithouse militia dickhead. That's the same guy.
I thought that too, until he said yard trimmings. You gotta learn to listen, Lou.
They were having a civil war within a civil war. So on May 3rd, it went down. Government soldiers attacked another militia, and the entire city went into urban warfare. That meant the whole city transformed into blocks of barricaded buildings. And it got really awkward. 80 men in Orwell's building was across the road from a cafe which had 20 terrified assault guards in it. One of which was dead, and they were shooting at the hotel. But the Chad that I mentioned earlier, Major Cop, just walked out the front and was like, "Gentlemen, we could keep shooting at each other, or we could figure out what's going on." That's what they did. They chilled out, and they were kind of friends. Like, Orwell, he was on guard at a theatre, and he would get waves from the assault guards being like, "Hey, we're still friends, right? We're cool." It would take one phone call for this guy to blow my brains out. After 5 days, everybody had run out of food, so they stopped fighting for a bit. But something really creepy happened. After the urban warfare, army soldiers were just pouring in to Barcelona. Like, there were thousands of them. It was like that elevator scene in Winter Soldier. And Orwell was like,
I looked at my friends, I was like, it's about to go down.
And one day before shit hit the fan, he was sent back to the trenches to fight again. When he gets back to the trenches, he gets shot in the neck. He had the default reaction of any legend after getting shot, and he said, "If he was my prisoner, I would congratulate him on his good shooting." And when he got into the ambulance, he's like, no one bleeding internally could survive the trip, because the road was smashed to shit. It was so bumpy, one of the guys in the ambulance vomited. Another guy, who the ambulance people forgot to tie down, was flipped out of his stretcher on the fucking ground. And George, with a bullet in his neck, was looking at that guy and thinking, wouldn't want to be him. One of his 2 vocal cords had been destroyed. The doctors said, "Oh, you're never going to get your voice back." Yes, indeed. That's quite enough of that, sir. Thank you. Bastard! You bastard! I kill you! So then George went back to Barcelona. He went back to his hotel, found his wife, who immediately said, oh, by the way, he brought his wife along to war.
10 creative date ideas that you have probably never tried.
His wife said, "You have to get out. It's a trap." And he's like, why? And it turns out, while George and his militia were fighting fascists in the trenches in Barcelona, they were getting denounced as fascist spies. Their whole organization had been made illegal. Everyone he knew had been arrested. Some of them were already getting executed, and he was now a wanted fugitive in Barcelona. He was hiding in churches for a couple days. But during the day, none of them had his picture. so he could walk around. And he walked into a prison to visit that Chad I told you about, Major Cop. He was arrested while on a special mission to deliver a really important letter to the front lines. Orwell knew that that letter would prove Cop's innocence. So, Orwell, a fugitive with a paralyzed arm, a broken voice, he does not even speak Spanish, runs into a building called the War Department to find the guy who would have that letter. And the only reason he got into that building in the first place is because the guards could not read his papers. He goes, finds an officer, this tiny guy, and he's like, wrong man, mistake, hero, help. Doesn't speak Spanish, but the dude is trying to listen to him, and he's like, yeah, okay, alright, I'll help you. But what militia did you say you were in? And George, knowing this would reveal him as a fugitive, still said, I'm with the Poom. And the dude looks at him. And for some reason, the guy helps him out. And they walk into the den of evil, which is the chief of police office. They walk in there. The little dude goes into the dude's office while George is waiting in this room surrounded by spies, by communist spies. He heard yelling for 20 minutes when the little dude walks out, completely sweating, like sweating out of his mind, and gives him the letter. Ultimately, it didn't actually matter. The letter didn't free Cop. It was just ignored. But as that guy was leaving, he turned around and shook George Orwell's hand. And George wrote, I cannot explain to you how deeply this action touched me. Because it would have been like shaking hands with a Nazi. So the next few days, he, his wife, and some friends escape. They get on a train, and the only reason they could get on that train is because the train police guys didn't know that his papers, which said 29th Division, they didn't know that that meant the Poom. When they'd escaped, the first paper that they read was announcing that George Orwell's friend and dude who was sitting right next to him had been arrested for espionage. And George is like, a bit premature, don't you think? But yeah, Orwell is a Chad. Wanted you to know that. There's heaps more to the story that I didn't really get to, like the fact that a spy had infiltrated George's militia and befriended his wife and found out that Orwell's wife was having an affair with Major Cop. There's so much going on, but that's all I really want to show you. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed.